Okay, so let's look at the mixing and everything you need to know about the details of mixing regular base coat. Again, this particular paint job in this video is regular opaque base coat. So we've got this orange color here, and I have two different kinds of paints that I typically buy. One is online paints from Eurochem or thecoatingstore.com. And the other type of paint is from the local PPG automotive paint store. And you probably have one in your area or somewhere near you. If you don't, find a local paint store that you really like. You know, whether it's Sherwin-Williams, some Napa part stores sell it. Some Sherwin-Williams stores sell the paint as well as the automotive paint as well as the house paint. And so, yeah, so anyway, the first thing that you want to do is you want to pay attention to the kind of paint that you have, the details of it, and you want to look at the paint code or the paint tech sheet online. And so this is Omni Paint, again, which is PPG's low-end brand that you get at the local paint store. And I know for a fact that this mixes 1-to-1, but let's take a look at the tech sheet for this now, and let me just walk you through the details of how to read a tech sheet, how to know how to mix it, and all that. All right, guys, this video is going to be showing you how to read a tech sheet. So for any product that you have, you can pretty much find all the tech sheets online. So you see I've got a Google screen up here, and so we're just going to type in the name of our product, which is Omni Base Coat Tech Sheet. So let's just pick our first one here and see what this comes up with. So if you bring this up, you'll see the Omni page, and you want to just scroll down and look for tech sheets. So right here you'll see technical data sheets and SDS index. We're going to click that one, and okay, so what we're spraying is Omni MBC, and you see they've got this chart of all kinds of things. And again, if you look at the kind of what we're spraying, it's actually Omni MBC. So that's what we're going to pick. Okay, so we're just going to pick the English version. If you happen to be in another country, we now have, let's zoom in a little bit. So we now have our tech sheet up, and this is going to give you all kinds of information. Okay, so there's just a few key things that you want to pay attention to, but we'll just kind of scroll through it. So it's giving you the color here, and over on the right it's giving you what type of reducer that you can buy for it. And you know, these are the PPG or the Omni numbers for the type of reducer. I'm going to talk to you about a reducer when we get ready to mix it, but I don't use the Omni or PPG brand reducers. They're really overpriced. I find that the house brand reducer is a generic reducer, and it works well for metal art. Now, if you're going to be painting a car, you know, and it's an expensive paint job, you know, thousands of dollars involved, then yes, spend the extra money and get the Omni reducer. But for metal art, just get the generic brand, house brand reducer that they sell at your local paint store. All right, so it's giving you some other compatible products here, which we're not going to look at. And so let's go down a little more. We'll zoom in a little bit more here. So surface cleaner, you know, again, we've already talked about the cleaning and prep with glass cleaner and with acetone or lacquer thinner. Sanding, you know, this is talking about sanding primer. You know, again, we're not doing sanding primer. We're using epoxy primer and going right over that with our base coat. So there is no sanding involved except for what you've already done to the bare metal. So here is here's the mixing ratio and what you want to look at. So the mixing ratio is going to be 1-to-1, or 1 parts of MBC base to 1 part reducer. And so we'll show you that here in a second when we mix it up. And then the next thing it's going to show you is the pot life. And the pot life is how long that you can keep these two things mixed together, and you see that it's indefinite. Base coat is really, and candy base coats are really the only things that have an indefinite pot life. Epoxy primer, clear coat, anything that has a catalyst in it has a very short pot life on it. And the pot life is how long can you keep it mixed before you spray it. And again, here you see some other additives that you can put in. You can add hardener to base coat. It's probably not a bad idea to do it on metal art, especially if you're not going to clear it. You know, if you're just going to use the base coat as the final top coat, you can add 10% catalyst in there to harden it up. So really, you know, it's pretty straightforward on this one. This a lot of base coats will give you flash times and other details, or tech sheets will, and I'll show you one more that we can look at that'll give you that. But really, this is what the tech sheet is and how to read it. And the main thing you're looking for here is the mix ratio. So let's get over and mix our base coat now. All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you about real quick is something called a ground coat. And a ground coat is simply a base coat that you can put down before your main base coat to give yourself a better chance of getting full coverage. And it's really good to always save any leftover paint that you have from a previous project. And if you see, we've got an orange color in here, and let's open this one. Let's get a little bit on each stick and look at the differences, where we can probably just look at the lids. So you can probably see that in the 2 lids we have down there that we, this color here I think is called orange. Yeah, it's Orange Pearl Sunrise. And it's a lighter looking orange. This has got a little more deep look, a little more red look to it. But orange is often a really translucent color, meaning it doesn't cover very well. You can see through it really easy. And it takes many, many coats to achieve full coverage. You know, normally like on a really opaque base coat, you know, probably 2 to 3 coats and you've got full coverage. With something like this, you may have to put 5 coats on to get full coverage across all your part where you have a uniform look. So one of the things that you can do, you know, is buy a little bit of your new color and be able to reuse your old color to, you know, tint your primer to get you pretty close to this color, and then you come on and it might only take 3 coats to cover that because you already have sort of an orangish color down. So let's look at this real quick. One of the ways that you can tell how translucent something is you stick your stick in the paint and pull it up and see if you can see through the stick. And this actually is pretty opaque. I thought it was going to be more translucent than that. Now that's unreduced so far, and I think this in here has some reducer in it, but maybe it doesn't. And it needs to be mixed up. And you can already kind of tell, I don't know if you can see that or not, but you can kind of see through the stick on that. You can just tell how translucent it is. So we're not going to do a ground coat on this. We're just going to go straight to the color that we want and get that mixed. But I did just want to talk to you about saving your old colors, and hopefully that makes sense. So if we were going to try to use this as a ground coat, we would go right on top of our primer and spray a couple of coats of this to turn it from white to orange. And now we've already got sort of an orange color, so it's really easy for this orange to cover that orange. And we're basically saving materials using some of our old paint. We can buy less of the new paint that we've tried to order. Hopefully that makes sense. But today, because this is really, really opaque, we're not going to do that because it should cover really well in probably about 2 to 3 coats. So let's get it mixed now. All right, so here is a little tip for you. When you have a brand new can of paint like the one we have here, you want to take a pick or a screwdriver or something like that and put some holes in it around the perimeter. And that is going to save you a ton of headache later when you try to put the lid back on. And especially if you're going to use it a few times. So now we have some little drain holes, so when we pour our paint out, and the residual paint gets in the little trough there, it'll drain back into the can and not get that really big buildup, so we get a good seal on our lid. All right, so before you start mixing, you really want to stir up your base coat, and this one doesn't appear to be separated. I just bought it a couple of days ago and it was shaking really well, but you really want to kind of mix it up before you, or stir it up before you start mixing and pouring. All right, so let's get to mixing here. I've showed you this in the epoxy primer mixing video, but it's the same concept. You want to pick out, we looked at our tech sheet. I showed you how to find the mix ratio. Sometimes it might be on the can, sometimes it's on the tech sheet. Most paint products, base coats, are either 2-to-1 or 1-to-1 mix. This particular one happens to be 1-to-1. So you want to find your column of 1-to-1 on your paint cup. And I'm just kind of holding that around in different ways because the light may be reflecting off of it. So you have 2 columns, and you want to, your first column, you're going to pour base coat in the amount that you want up to that number. So let's just say that we want to fill the cup up, you know, to about here, 3/4 of the way or whatever. Or if you just need a little bit mixed, then you would come down and, you know, pour it at a smaller amount. But you would pour your base coat in at number 4, for example, and then you pour your reducer in to the 4 in the second column. And that'll give you your proper mix ratio. The other way you can do it is use the ounces column here. And this whole cup up to this line is 10 ounces. And if you wanted to mix 1-to-1, 10 ounces, you would fill up 5 ounces of your base coat and then fill it the rest of the way to 10 ounces with your reducer. But let's stick to this for now, just to show you how to do it this way. We're going to go to 4 on our first line right there with base coat. So let me show you that. Now again, I've got a brand new can, and one of the hardest and most frustrating things to do is pour paint out of a brand new can. But we're gonna do it, and we're gonna go for it. And then I'm gonna come down and show you what I did here. So I'm gonna scoot that back in, and I'm gonna be watching the 4. All right, we didn't make too big of a mess, but you see all that paint around the perimeter. Now that paint's gonna just drip back into the can, and we can put our lid back on. All right, let me show you the close-up on this. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. But you see we're up to the 4 right there on our first column on the base coat. And now you see the second column is the 4 up here, and that'll give us our 1-to-1. So I'm gonna fill the rest of it up with a reducer up to that 4. And this is something on base coat that is, you know, you don't have to be perfect with this. When you're doing things with hardener, you want to try to be as accurate as you can. With base coat, you know, you got some leeway. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't stress yourself out. Just try to get it as close as you can. All right, again, I've got a brand new can of reducer here, so I'm going to try to get this done without making a big mess and do it in a way here that you can see what I'm doing and also not make a big mess. And I may take a couple of goes at this to get our proper mix ratio, but I'm going to give it a go. So we were going up to the 4 is what we were shooting for, and we're a little bit shy of that. But I didn't make too big of a mess. I got a little bit of a mess there. So let's put a little more in. And let's see what we got there. Okay, so we went just over the 4 on our line, and that's going to be fine. That's no problem at all. So now we have our proper ratio of base coat to paint, base coat to reducer in there. So we're just going to mix it up, and you want to mix it up pretty good. You know, this part here, mix it up pretty quickly. When you do clear coat or other things, you know, the mixing, you need to spend more time mixing with it. But and if you wanted to get, you know, really technical about this, you could definitely get a little bit more base coat in there to even that out, you know, get your mix ratio to perfectly 1-to-1. But the other thing you want to look at is how's it running off the stick. You know, this is kind of a viscosity statement, and there's some rules about how long it drips and how long it takes to run down the side of a panel that'll give you your right flow rate out of the paint gun. But we're mixed now. So next up, we're gonna load it in the gun, and we're gonna show you how to spray it. All right, now we're starting our final. We've done all the prep. We've showed you the mixing. We showed you how to read a tech sheet. Now it's actually time to spray the base coat. So, you know, remember in our previous video, if you haven't watched it yet, go back and watch the video on the priming. And before you actually want to put your base coat on the primer, you want to just wipe it down one last time. This has been sitting here for a couple of days. And if you let this sit more than 2 or 3 days, you need to go back and sand it, or at a minimum, scuff it with Scotch-Brite. And I actually did that on this one. I came back and scuffed it because you just want to, you know, you want to not take a chance. I mean, you may be inside the recoat window, but going back and scuffing it is a good way to make sure that you're not violating the recoat window and you don't have any adhesion problems. And it takes just a second to do that. And the other thing it does is if you had any nibs or, you know, anything that had gotten in your that had got, you know, landed on your paint, you know, while it was still a little bit wet, that scuff pad will get those out for you, and you'll have a nice smooth surface to work with. All right, so you just want to wipe it down, get it clean, make sure it's clean. I've already blown it off with an air hose once. So, all right, so we are almost ready to paint. The last thing you want to do right before you spray is, and do not forget this step, this is so important, is just to wipe this thing off with a tack cloth. Again, you're just getting little fuzz and imperfections and just various little dirt and dust nibs that you can't see. And you do not want to wipe hard with this. You just want to drag across it, because this has got a tacky, sticky surface on it, and it will pick up little things in it. And you want to kind of just, you know, sweep it off as well. You can knock things off the edge that may be a little heavier to pick up. So please do not forget this step. I promise you, it'll be worth it. And I can tell you many times I forgot to do this and ended up with stuff right as soon as you spray the paint gun. You see it right in your paint. So just keep working it. Look for things, I keep seeing little things showing up on the surface there. So I think I got it all down. So real quick, I want to talk to you about gun technique. And this is something that you're going to have to practice with. There's just nothing I can, you know, show you or teach you that will be a substitute for having the right gun technique. So, but the tips I can give you are, you want to keep the air cap parallel to the surface. A lot of people will kind of spray this way, and that's not parallel. You want to be up in here so that the air cap, the bottom of the air cap is parallel to the surface. You want about a 50% overlap with base coat at a gun distance of about 6 inches. So 6 inches is about the width of your, you know, if you make a shape like that, depending on the size of your hand, that's 6 inches right there. That's about how far you want to be. And you want to start with a 50% overlap. And that is, you know, make a pass, drop down half of that pass, and come across it. And I'll slow it down in the video so you can kind of see it. And again, this part does not have to be perfect. And on your very first coat on top of primer, you're not looking for full coverage. You're just putting a little light coat on there to get some wetness on it. You know, you're not looking to wet it all in. This is not clear coat, this is base coat. So let me show you that. This will be our first coat. Some people call this a bond coat, some people call it a tack coat. All right, you see how we got some blotchiness and just unevenness, and you can kind of see that over here on this edge, I didn't make enough, you know, coats over here to start. So, you know, we'll fix that on our second coat. So that's our first coat. Hopefully you saw the technique and the 50% overlap. So we'll come back and show you our second coat. We're gonna let this flash off. You can see it's kind of shiny. What you wanna do on flashing is wait until that is dry looking like that over there. These wet spots in here, one of the things that'll happen normally is when you're painting, the closer you get to you, the more detail you can have. When you're reaching out across a panel, it's a little bit harder to do that. So I'm probably gonna start this time that side, push it halfway, and then come around and pick it up over here. So, all right, we're back. Time for the second coat. You guys may have noticed that. I noticed it a little bit and noticed it kind of spraying funny, that I had, it was just, the gun was spraying a little weird, and the tip, I didn't have it tightened up all the way, and it was pulling in air separately. And so it was sort of making a little sputtering sound and a little sputtering on the panel. And if you look close, which you can't see it in the camera, but there's some little speckling and things that, you know, are out there. And the good thing is this is on our first coat. We're gonna more than cover that up in our next two coats here. So you see I got our first coat on. You can touch the piece right beside it, and if it's not wet feeling, then you're ready for your next coat. And you see it's not shiny anymore. The shininess or the sheen's off of it. So that means it's flashed properly and you're ready for your next coat. So on this one, I'm gonna start here and push it across, and then I'm gonna walk around and pick it up and pull it the rest of the way from the other side. I'll see if we can get better coverage this time. Okay, well, you see that went on really well. It's a pretty, you know, fairly, I'm gonna say a medium wet coat. And we may put one more coat on it. I think we have full coverage now, but just in case, sometimes, man, my eyes, when I look at it, it looks like it's fully covered, but there may be a little light spot, dark spot. So we're gonna wait and let it flash and put one more coat on just to make sure, and it'll give us another chance to show you the painting as well. So we'll be back in a second. You know, we'll be back instantly on camera, but it'll be about 15 minutes while we let this flash.